Hello, Internet. This is Sophia, the Red Angel, bringing you another installment of Logic versus Fallacy Explained, where I discuss with you a pattern of reasoning so as to help you be able to tell valid patterns of reasoning apart from fallacious ones. My approach to fallacy recognition is not aimed at simply teaching you as many fallacies as possible, but also developing techniques to discern as objectively as humanly possible whether a suspected case is indeed a fallacy or whether it is a false alarm. Today I will be discussing a whole cluster of fallacies collectively known as appeal to authority. And I call it a cluster of fallacies because really there are at least three distinct fallacies that I can think of which tend to be lumped together under this label. One of these is what I like to call the appeal to false authority fallacy, which is what you do when you base your argument on a claim made on the authority of someone who really is not an expert on the subject that the claim is about. Then there is what I call the appeal to excessive authority fallacy, when the source whose authority the claim is staked on is indeed expert in the field, but your argument hinges on attributing to the claim a greater level of certainty than their expertise warrants. Last but not least is what I like to refer to as the distortion of authority fallacy, which is what you commit when your source does indeed have the necessary expertise, but you are distorting or misinterpreting their claim. Of course, appeals to authority are not always fallacious, and it is very important to realize this, as failure to understand this very important fact is at the basis of many a conspiracy theory. Appeals to authority can be valid, provided that the authority that they appeal to has valid expertise in the relevant field, provided that said authority's claim is properly represented, and provide that said authority's level and reliability of authority is not exaggerated. People who dismiss all appeals to authority as fallacious tend to argue that it is always our responsibility to check the evidence and see if it backs up the claim. This is nice and idealistic, except for one little snag, that being that we are not up to the task. Often, properly parsing and interpreting data takes a lot of specialized training that most of us just don't have. Even if you are well trained in analyzing the data in some fields, that does not necessarily qualify you to do the same in other fields. And if you insist on trying to analyze data that you are not trained to analyze, you could make serious mistakes without even realizing it. Does this mean that you should take the testimony of experts as infallible? Not by a long shot, but it does mean that there are times when you have to accept the fact that going with what the experts say is a much better bet than trying to analyze for yourself data that you have no qualification for. So in short, while there are indeed such things as appeal to authority fallacies, you must never forget that not every appeal to authority is fallacious. So, back to what we were discussing. Now, there is more to fallacy recognition than just learning to spot as many different fallacies as possible. A very crucial part of the process, and an often neglected one at that, is learning how to distinguish actual instances of fallacies from false alarm. This can be difficult to do because our human minds tend to be overly dismissive of fallacies and arguments for positions that we favor, as well as overly eager to spot fallacies in arguments for positions that we do not favor. One tool that I think can be helpful for this purpose is the development, refinement, and use of algorithms for the purpose of resolving such issues in logic and reasoning. Such algorithms are, of course, not infallible, no matter how carefully they are constructed, and furthermore, though they can reduce the room that bias has with which to mess with our assessment, they cannot eliminate it entirely. That said, use of such algorithms in evaluating whether or not a given fallacy is present is still far more reliable than just shooting from the hip. To this end, I have developed an algorithm for sorting out the appeal to authority cluster. I will first give you a run-through of the algorithm, and then I will demonstrate its use with a few examples. Let us start, though, by clarifying a few labels that this algorithm uses. Party A is the party that is suspected of possibly using an appeal to authority fallacy. Source B is the source whose authority Party A is trying to appeal to, and Claim C is the claim that Party A is trying to bolster by appealing to Source B's authority. So let's go through the algorithm. In step 1 we ask, does Source B possess the required expertise in the area that Claim C pertains to? If the answer to this question is no, then it is confirmed that this is an instance of the appeal to false authority fallacy, and we are done. On the other hand, if the answer to this question is yes, then we go on to step 2. In step 2 we ask, does the statement made by Source B contain any expressions of the inherent limitations of Source B's own authority? For example, if the statement includes the usual disclaimer of how scientists do not know anything for sure, but merely are able to come up with whatever theory best explains the known facts, that would be an example of the kind of expression that I am talking about here. If the answer is no, then we can skip ahead to step 4, but if it is yes, we first have to go to step 3. In step 3 we ask, does Party A misrepresent those statements of the inherent limitation of Source B's own authority to mean something other than what they do mean? For example, in the example that I gave, if Source B's statement contains the disclaimer that I mentioned in the previous step about the inherent limitations of science, and Party A presents that as meaning that it is okay to just disregard what science says if we do not like it, then that would be an example of what this step is checking for. If the answer is yes, then it is confirmed that this is an instance of the distortion of authority fallacy. On the other hand, if the answer is no, we go on to step 4, where we ask, is Claim C otherwise an accurate representation of the claim made by Source B? This includes expressions of uncertainty in the wording of the claim itself, unless those expressions are mere acknowledgement of the given authority's own inherent limitations. If the answer is no, that is, if it is not otherwise an accurate representation of the claim, then once again it is confirmed that this is an instance of the distortion of authority fallacy. On the other hand, if the answer is yes, then we go on to step 5, where we ask, is Party A treating Claim C with greater confidence than the authority of Source B warrants? If the answer to this final question is yes, then it is confirmed that this is an instance of the appeal to excessive authority fallacy. On the other hand, if the answer is no, then we are in the clear. Yes, it still is an appeal to authority, but it is a valid or cogent appeal to authority. Okay, That's it for the basic run-through of the algorithm. But now, let us show the algorithm in action. On June the 4th, 2008, ABC News reported celebrities Jim Carrey and Jenny McCarthy are hoping to use their star power to raise awareness about the dangers of childhood vaccinations that they believe are likened to diseases like autism. Link in this video's YouTube video description area. Now, never mind the offensiveness of viewing autism as some sort of disease. Should you take warnings by such celebrities of any dangers of vaccines too seriously? Well, let us go through the algorithm. Step 1, we ask ourselves, does either Jim Carrey or Jenny McCarthy possess the required expertise in the subject that vaccines and any risks thereof pertains to? Well, no. They are both actors. Neither of them are physicians. So the answer is no. So in that case, it is confirmed. This is a case of the appeal to false authority fallacy. That one was easy, now wasn't it? Well, maybe it was too easy. Some people might say that I am oversimplifying the narrative to the point of straw-manning my interlocutor, pointing out that though Carey and McCarthy are spreading awareness of the idea of the vaccine being dangerous, it is not their idea. They are merely lending their celebrity to bring awareness to an idea that actually comes from a real doctor. And to be fair, neither of them is the originator of the anti-vax rumors. It is traced back to a certain person named Andrew Wakefield. So let us go through this algorithm again. Step 1. Does Andrew Wakefield have expertise in the relevant field? Well, he has, or at least at the time had, the credentials of being a medical doctor. So this time the answer to step 1 is yes. So instead of this being the end of the story, we have to move on to step 2. Here we ask ourselves, does Wakefield's statement contain any expressions of the inherent limitations of his own authority? Well, not as far as I can tell, so we skip over step 3 and move straight on to step 4, where we ask, is this concern over alleged dangers of a vaccine based on an accurate representation of Wakefield's claim? Well, as far as I can tell, it is. So the answer is yes. So finally we arrive at step 5 and we ask, are those promoting these concerns over the vaccine treating Wakefield's claims with greater confidence than Wakefield's level of authority warrants? Well, I would say so. For starters, Wakefield, though he had all the right credentials at the time, was just one doctor. However, his word went against the assurances of several other medical doctors and medical scientists who did tests trying to find a link between vaccines and autism, only to find none at all. Of course, even the overwhelming consensus of experts in a field is not infallible, but it definitely has more weight than the opinion of any single expert in the field. This is, of course, before we even bother to take into account the bit about how Wakefield was subsequently discredited. So to make a long story short, the answer to this question is an emphatic yes. So from this, it is confirmed. This is a case of an appeal to excessive authority fallacy. So it is not the same appeal to authority fallacy that was flagged in the earlier oversimplified example, but it is still a fallacy and one within the appeal to authority cluster. But am I not myself committing an appeal to authority fallacy by trusting even the overwhelming consensus of medical doctors and scientists on this matter rather than investigating the matter myself? Well, let us use this question as the basis for my third example. This example flows through the whole algorithm exactly as the previous Wakefield example does, until we reach step 5. But then we ask, am I treating the assurance by the medical community that there is no link between vaccines and autism with greater confidence than the authority of the medical community as a whole warrants? Well, had I concluded on their testimony that there is absolutely no chance of there being any link that they somehow missed, one could make that point. But I am not concluding that. I am merely recognizing that they are experts who have come to the same opinion. I could try to get a hold of the data and do my own research, but I am not a medical doctor, and certainly not a medical scientist. If I pore through the data and it seems to me that there is a link, I know that the chance of an untrained layperson like me seeing what seems to be a link when there is none is far greater than the chance of all these experts who are competing with one another, all missing a link that really is there. Yes, assuming that I would find what seems to be a link, a possibility that may or may not even occur, there would be a small remote chance that I was right when the entire medical establishment was wrong. However, it would be hubris to the point of utter stupidity for me to bet on that. Might it be worthwhile bringing it to the attention of these experts if I think that I have found something that they missed? Of course. But to just bet against what the overwhelming consensus of experts says just because I, with no background whatsoever, find otherwise, that's just plain dumb. So no, I am not treating this with a higher level of confidence than the authority of the overwhelming consensus of the medical community warrants. So in this case, the conclusion is that this example is a false alarm. I am committing an appeal to authority, but it is a cogent appeal to authority, not a fallacy. So, what pattern of reasoning, be it fallacy or cogency, would you like me to cover next? Let me know in the comments area below, or join my Discord and let me know there. You can find an invite to join my Discord on my main links page. You can in turn find a link to my main links page in the YouTube video description area of this video. You can also find a link there to my Ko-Fi page, where you can get updates on this channel that I am at present unable to give you on YouTube due to my current channel size. My Ko-Fi page is also where you can go if you want to support my channel financially, because if you like this channel now, you should see what I will be able to do with it when its budget is no longer limited to what I am able to siphon away from my personal living expenses. Also, don't forget to help my channel grow by liking, sharing, subscribing, and ringing the bell. And until next time, see ya!